I think we can say that we're making an effort to get rid of that fund freeze. And nice to meet you.
Yeah, this is Gail.
Congratulations. You're going to be great.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be wonderful. And I need to make a couple of phone calls and figure out what I can do quickly. I don't want to make promises that I can't keep. So I want to say right now that I'm working on things rather than saying 100% we're done, because that's not fair. Yeah, but I think it's
His dad would say,
Right now,
Oh, good, and the boundaries have been moved 2 in a row. I just see that. They'll touch on that. Okay.
where are we putting?
I'll start with Debbie and call on you. You want to do it that way, or do you want to start?
I think
do
Chief Fire Chief has
He'll start.
about that stuff.
We'll start with Chief first, then Debbie, then.
Yeah.
Okay.
well, I think Debbie's kind of generally volunteer. You guys want to talk more specific stuff.
Okay.
I don't know what Chief's going to say, but
Welcome, everyone. I would like to invite you to the Friday, May 24th, 2019 City Council meeting. Roll call, please.
Fitzwater. Graham.
Here.
Hensley.
Here.
Hussey.
here.
Kimna.
Here.
Mahalovich. Prather. Schreiber. Ward.
here.
Weissman.
Present.
All right, I'd like to read the emergency meeting. The City Council of the City of Jefferson is called on less than 24-hour notice pursuant to Section 610.020.4 of RS Missouri. 24-hour notice for this meeting is impractical due to the aftermath of the devastating EF3 tornado of May 22nd, 2019, and the flooding of the Missouri River, both of which constitute an emergency condition for Jefferson City. So we would like to welcome everyone here. Thank you for being here today for this update for our community and our elected officials. And we have a few guests with us today. We have our County Commissioner, Mr. Sam Bushman, is here, and Lieutenant Governor Mike Kehoe. And we have, I believe, Ray Bozarth is on his way from Senator Josh Hawley's office. Did I miss any other visiting elected officials? We appreciate you all being here, and also members of the media to help us report this. So we're going to go through a few reports. We're going to start with a volunteer report, then we will move to fire, and then police and public works. So we'll kind of go in that order, and and go through all the updates. And then we will also take questions, of course, from council, but also from our guests and from the media as well. So I'd like to start by welcoming Mrs. Debbie Hendricks, who is our statewide volunteer, and she will give us a volunteer update. Welcome, Debbie.
Thank you. Do I have to pull this up and talk into it? Okay. Is it on? Okay.
And before we begin, too, I was asked if we are streaming, and I believe we are. Is that correct in the back? Is this streaming or not? Yes. Okay, so we are streaming. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So that way, when you're in the mic, we'll be able to hear online as well. Thank
Okay.
you.
Well, thank you for having me. I attended a meeting earlier today, and we talked about both the volunteer issue and the donations issue that faces the city of Jefferson City in the post-tornado situation. And communities who have had disasters often see an outpouring of love and affection and concern from both citizens and people outside who want to do something to help heal the community. And while that is a wonderful step for them to take, it can also become something of a problem for the community that is trying to recover in the most possibly best way from something that has constituted the worst day of the lives of the people that are impacted. So I've been asked by Mr. Crowell and some of the others if I can help with coordinating the volunteers and working with organizations here in Jefferson City and elsewhere to coordinate the donations. And I am happy to do that by sitting in the the City Emergency Operations Center representing the state that's supporting you. So the first thing we're going to do is try to land on the best possible way to harness volunteers. And we have discussed the United Way 211 number as being a single entry point. One of the concerns with that number at this point is that those who call the number are entered into a phone tree, a recorded message tree, and that is possibly not the best situation for those that have been impacted and those that want to help. So I'm going to try to remedy that situation. I can't say at this moment that it is 100% remedied, but I am working on that situation, and I have high confidence that we can work with 211 and make a better situation for the city of Jefferson. And so it's what I do. I coordinate with voluntary organizations every day in blue skies and in gray skies, and I'm happy to do it for the city that I've called home for over 50 years. So I appreciate your having me at your table and look forward to working with everyone to do the best for the city I love.
Thank you. We appreciate that very much. And does council have any questions at this time? And I'm sure at the end we'll have some more.
Okay.
But
I
Councilman
just have
Graham?
one quick question. In regards to the 211 number, is it that you guys that they need more volunteers to answer the phones, or what is it?
The automated message is their standard message, and
Okay.
there is a way for them to bring additional staff in to work a phone bank, if you will. And they generally do that based on the volume of calls, and they have not seen a volume of calls that warrants that yet. But I'm going to try to sort of circumvent that and ask them to move to that phone bank situation more quickly, Carlos.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Debbie.
Any other questions?
And I know there's a lot of, there will be questions about some of our local efforts. The 211 is for people who need help, but then we're also at some point, and it might be more, I think we may have other updates on some of the local efforts for when people want to volunteer and how we get them into the system as well.
Right. So 211 can do if you want to volunteer, if you want to donate, and if you need help. It can be the single entry point for all three of those, and they will work with local organizations to connect all of those dots. And I look forward to working with the local organizations and making that connection a little easier as well.
Great. Well, Debbie, we appreciate that. It's so important to get our volunteers engaged and connected. So I'm sure we'll come back to you with more questions as we go through the remainder of the meeting. So
Certainly.
thank you. And now we would invite Fire Chief Schofield.
Thank you. I'll just provide a brief update on information that we presented to you yesterday as our plan for the day. And it's a little bit difficult to see on the screen. I don't know if we can maybe get the lights dimmed in the front. If we could, that might help a little bit. But what you see is the data that was collected and turned in and processed. The crew started around 7 a.m. and then completed their work around 6 p.m. yesterday evening. So what you see is there's a lot of information we collect. We aren't displaying it all, but this map is actually pulled directly from the city's website. So this has been publicized and is now open to the public for them to view. But what it really just shows is that initial first look at some structural assessment. There's a more formal process underway today that someone else will speak to later. I believe we have Larry Burkhart here to speak to that. But I just want to tell you that this information that we're presenting is part of the information we collected yesterday, along with touching all of those homes. And as I mentioned yesterday, we do an assessment on each one. We do a 360 of each one. We talk to the residents if they're available, and we document a number of different things that we see in terms of what they need or how we can assist them. But the primary mission really is search and rescue, and to make sure that we have accountability for everybody in the jurisdictional area that's been identified. So that's what occurred yesterday. We still have no reports. We have no outstanding reports of any missing people. And I think that's an important thing to note. If someone does think there is someone unaccounted for, we need to know that information. Everybody in the field should be able to forward that information up to us at the EOC, but we have nothing out there at this point that says there's anybody that's unaccounted for. But the color code that's up there breaks it down to very simple terms, and it's just 4 different categories. And those categories are no damage, which is the green, and there were 1,167 no damage structures. And there may be very minor damage to some of those. We're not saying that there might not be some cosmetic issues with those structures, but there was no structural damage. And then we had 175 that were damaged. So we said there was something significant, something damaged to that structure. Those may or may not be inhabitable. There were 17 that were destroyed. Those are ones that we have major concerns with. There's still some danger there, but they're significantly destroyed. Those are the orange. Let me go back one. The damaged is yellow, the destroyed is orange, and then finally the red is failed. And so if it's red, that means there's major damage to that building, that structure. And there were 77 of those. So just to recap that, out of 1,436 structures, 1,167 were no damage, 175 were damaged, 17 were destroyed, and 77 were failed. So that's the structures that we touched yesterday and some of the data that we collected. I will mention that it was a group, as I said yesterday, a multidisciplinary group put together as a task force. Missouri Task Force 1 search and rescue folks from all over the state, along with our fire personnel, law enforcement representatives, ambulance service, and then most importantly, that we don't normally work with, but we did in this case, Ameren UE supplied us with both gas and electric personnel to go with us as we went through, which was very helpful because we were able to mitigate some of those issues as we found them in the field. So that kind of expedited some of those mitigation things that don't normally get addressed in a search and rescue blitz attack like this. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Chief Schofield, you mentioned 17 destroyed, 77 failed. What's the difference between destroyed and failed again, the distinction there?
Well, there's some subjectivity to that early assessment. And one of the things that Larry Burkhart's going to mention to you later on is that really is the mission now of the SAVE Coalition as they're working through doing the more formalized structural analysis with higher skilled and professional structural assessment teams that are in the field today, engineers from all over. So they're going to probably dissect that issue more succinctly with a little more information. I know they're spending a lot of time trying to distinguish between the destroyed and the failed, and also the damaged portions. For us, I can just give you from my perspective, we look at it as if there's a structural issue that would cause harm to someone in there, we see that typically as a destroyed or a damaged. If it's on the ground flattened or half of it is missing and gone, we see that as a failed structure. just in very, very generic terms. But there is some discretion based on the crews that are going through there. Their primary mission is not to do structural assessment. It's to do search and rescue. But what it does give you is a general idea of where the concentrated damage is at in an area. And that's really the intent. And so what you can do is look at a map like this and know that if you're in the green areas, typically those are in pretty good shape. As you go into the yellow to orange, you have significant problems and challenges. As you go into the red, that's where the highest level of destruction occurred.
Thank you, Chief Schofield, and it's impressive that you were able to get through that many homes in a day's time, really. So I know that means y'all were really working hard and diligently, so thank you.
Appreciate that. Credit to all the people that were in the field doing the work. Yep.
Great. And any questions of council? Okay, and this time we'll move on to Lieutenant Dave Williams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One of the things that was first asked from you for us to provide today, although I'm sure we're going to miss someone in this list, one of the questions we had for us was how many law enforcement partners actually came to our assistance yesterday. And this list, I apologize early if I forget someone, but the Missouri State Highway Patrol, and then they also brought the Highway Patrol cadets. They brought the entire cadet class, the Columbia Police Department, the Boone County Sheriff's Department, Fulton Police Department, Holt Summit Police Department, Capitol Police, Lincoln University Police Department, the University of Missouri Police Department, the Cole County Sheriff's Department, and we had federal assistance from the FBI, from the ATF, from the U.S. Marshal Service, and from the DEA, all housed here in Jefferson City. They gave us personnel because they realized the scope of what we were up against yesterday. The other thing we were going to talk about is the curfew regarded to the restricted area. And as your emergency proclamation yesterday, the Chief of Police has in fact extended that today. With the extension, however, we did pull that map in and restricted the area a little bit more. Using Chief Schofield's map that's already up, the area that you see in red is the updated restriction. And what we did is from the west, we brought that in from Madison Street to Monroe Street and at our west border. We kept the Stadium Boulevard and the Lafayette Street as borders for the south and to the east. What we found is throughout the day, I've released several media releases trying to explain all the activity that was going on throughout Public Works, law enforcement, and the fire. The EOC has been running very, very rampantly trying to keep up with everything that's going on with the flood as well as with things from the tornado. So they've been very busy. We're trying to keep the public up to date. From the social media side of it, I would say that we are trying to, all of our resources, Twitter, Facebook, the fire department Facebook, the police department Facebook, as well as city Facebook. We're trying to get all the information out to the public. We realize that there's a lot of people with a lot of questions. There's been several calls about the 211 system. One of the reasons why we brought Ms. SEMA into us is to make sure we get this the way it should be and get all the answers for the citizens we can the quickest we can.
Great, so thank you, Lieutenant Williams. So on the border, it's the same as last night. The only difference is last night where it stopped, basically you're talking about the immediate downtown area where it was at Madison. You've moved it to Monroe to allow people to get through the downtown, those 2 blocks. Is that correct?
Yes, part of that reason is we are constantly addressing the area to make sure that we don't have it too small, but at the same time, we have to take into account all the areas that we need to look at. And after looking at it today, a lot of other people came to a conclusion that the Monroe Street was a better point for that western border, so we brought it in. And what I should say is that the chief is looking at this on a day-to-day basis. So because we've extended it tonight, there will also be another announcement tomorrow as to whether or not that's going to be in effect at all, and if so, what the borders will be at that time. So this is a day-by-day. Since your declaration yesterday, we're constantly going to update that daily.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Hensley?
Thank you. Just a couple questions, Lieutenant, if you don't mind. Would you say it's fair to say that the curfew in this zone was deemed necessary because of the concentration of damaged, failed, destroyed properties, and in particular the fact that so many structures in this zone are left exposed and unsecured?
Yes. As I said, this is I'm the person giving the information. By no means am I the one making the decisions for that. But from the police perspective, I can tell you that we're looking at not just a particular street, we're looking at the areas that were hit the hardest. We want to make sure that when we do open that back up, it's safe for the homeowners first to go in, because those are the ones we're concerned about. So we want to make sure that the area is ready for someone to go in. Ameren UE is doing all they can to get the structure back together so we can get people in, but we have to make sure that when we say they can go in that restricted area after hours, it's for a reason, not just a particular square on the map.
Yeah, so no matter where it might have hit in town,
No matter
This
where
sort
it
of
would have hit
damage.
in our town, we would look at this in the same way. Our responsibility is to make sure that we are protecting our citizens, and part of that is restricting that area. We talked about the looting. We have been fortunate, we've been able to control that. Part of that is because of our restrictions that we put in place. In all actuality, today, we are working a case right now where we have taken some people into custody for looting at a business that was closed that's not necessarily in the restricted area. However, based on our people being in position, they noticed something, they contacted these people, and we being the police department, are right now working to get charges against two people not from Jefferson City who seem to be here for the wrong reasons.
right, if you don't mind, Mayor, I'd like to take just a second. I think a large portion of what's on the screen right now, and aside from what's on the screen right now, a large swath of the property that was so affected by this tornado is in the 5th Ward. And the neighbors who I talked to, especially the folks whose properties were damaged or destroyed, are just beyond grateful and have nothing but glowing thanks to share with police and fire and all of the law enforcement and emergency personnel who responded and who joined us here, and also for their own neighbors. This has been an incredible team effort, and I just want to spread the thanks that I've been hearing from all these folks. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Councilman Hensley. Great comments. And speaking of traffic, with the restrictions because of, for one, the tornado damage area and then the flooding, there's some significant changes. I know just as of today, the Missouri Boulevard portion near McCarty Street, so kind of near the Capitol Plaza area, has been restricted, and then Broadway has water, so between Highway 50 and McCarty, there's some areas there that do restrict north-south. This will restrict that as well, naturally, so we've noticed increased traffic in certain areas. Do you have any advice other than just being very patient as people are coming in and out of Jefferson City and driving through town?
Madam Mayor, I would say that I would defer that one to Captain Wilde, who is our operations commander for the police department. He's in charge of patrolling. He's the one right now that's really in charge of the goings and comings of the patrol officers, even from our agency and all the other ones. So Captain Wilde probably could have a better grasp on the traffic restrictions.
Thanks, yeah. Obviously, water over the road, it's never a good idea to drive through it, so turn around, don't drown. It's the catchword. As far as the traffic in these areas, and I think somebody hit the word right on the head when they said the concentration of damage. We had a lot of damage in town, but because we still maintain restrictions in this area and a curfew, it's because of the concentration of damage. Secondarily to this area, we've got the what I'll call the affected area, the impact area, divided up into 3 zones. This is the most heavily affected, so it's restricted. The other areas south, we're still assigning officers to those areas in what we will call focused deterrence, high visibility, high activity, mobile patrols. But that's just because those areas don't have the concentration that these do, and that's why we feel that we can keep those open without a curfew at that point. But when I do go out and assess these roads, and I'm doing it about hourly, I'm looking to see, one, is the street safe? Is there debris? Is there overhanging limbs that may come down? I'm also looking at just general safety considerations in those areas. How many windows are out? How many doors are open? Is there a gaping hole in the side of a house? So general safety considerations. We do not want to allow these areas to be open for unwanted persons to come in and start pillaging it before the business or property owners have the opportunity to get in there and, excuse me, to secure it themselves. So those are a few of the things I'm thinking about whenever those decisions are being made.
All right, thank you. We would ask that people have extra caution and time and patience when they are out and about driving in Jefferson City,
Right.
because it will take you longer to get where you're going, and know that going out there, and please have the patience, because the routes you normally take will have more traffic due to the other closures.
And I will add, Madam Mayor, that in the proclamation, it talks about the people that are allowed into the area that the curfew doesn't pertain to, the workers, the people that are first responders, the people that are in there trying to recover and do the work. And we're working very closely with people that come to the intersections that need to get in and do some work to allow them entry. What we're trying to do is prevent the onlookers, the people that just don't need to be there, that are causing congestion, that are getting in the way of the first responders or the people that are cutting trees. We want to keep them free to do what they're doing, allow them to do their work without having to worry about running into somebody that wants to go down there and take photos or something like that. But I've seen a lot of positive forward progress in the last, actually amazing progress in the last 2 days since this has occurred. The amount of cleanup that's happened is amazing, and I would see this continuing to shrink as long as the safety situation continues to improve.
Thank you. Any further updates from Police Department at this time? Okay, or questions? Okay, thank you, Lieutenant Williams. And we appreciate all the efforts, and I know you've been out in front of many of the press conferences, and we appreciate you taking that role and doing that as well. Public Works, Mr. Marash.
Yeah, thank you. And we'll kind of, Britt and I will both tag team this a little bit, but I'll get it started with, so really, like I think it's already been noted, is we're working kind of two events, one a flood and one a tornado zone. But I'll go over the kind of a hot topic I've been hearing a lot about is disposal. How do I do that? What am I supposed to do with that? So we kind of, and that's kind of a two-part scenario as well. A lot of people had debris from a storm, but then we also have this tornado zone, I'll call it. So it kind of dovetails with some of the curfew area, that kind of area. It's not well defined maybe yet, but it's going to get better defined as we go. So just for everyone, including if you're in the tornado zone or not, a couple options, and Lieutenant Williams sending out a press release here, I think right now or right after this meeting, we've worked up. But just in general, I'll talk about landfill. So of course, anybody can go to the landfill, but if you want to take building materials with some minor amounts of vegetation in it and stuff, you can go to the landfill. That we've talked to them. They've extended their hours over the weekend. On Saturday, they're going from 7 to 3, and Monday 7, and they're taking Sunday off, but 7 to 3 on Monday as well. So anybody can do that, whether you're in the tornado zone or not. But there is a fee to go to the landfill, of course, and dispose of material there. So that's anybody. Then we talk about just vegetative material, not mingled with building materials and that other stuff. Anybody, a citizen of the city, I have to have some proof of ID that you're from the city, but that's in the tornado zone or outside of it. We've contracted with a Twee House Excavating, and it's near the landfill off Shamrock Road. They have a quarry site out there that we're using, and anybody can go there and deposit vegetated debris from the city free of charge. So you can show up there free of charge. We ask you to kind of secure that load if you're on the highways and things, trying to get it out there and do the best you can, but that's a free of charge site, and anybody can deposit the material there from within the city free of charge. So that's kind of that side of things. Now let's talk about kind of the tornado zone side of things as well. Go ahead.
Can I interrupt for just a second? And I noticed the press release that went out earlier didn't mention the contracted site we already have at All Seasons, or Chris Shepard, Lease Place, and he posted something on Facebook, and so I got some questions to say, well, is he receiving stuff as well? And I believe he is, or they are receiving just what they normally receive, right?
Yeah, and we're asking, now that's a separate contract the city pays for, and that's for your normal, every day. I picked up a few sticks in my yard over the weekend so I could mow my grass, that kind of thing, and he's still doing that. Above a certain limit within the contract, they contemplated a major event like this that, of course, he couldn't take the same price to process that material. And so he'll still receive material, is my understanding, but if he exceeds a certain quantity, then the city, the taxpayers, have to pay more money for that. So that's why we've tried to do this in lieu of that. And certainly, if you're just mowing your yard and want to take your grass clippings, that's great. But we would really ask you to use this new free site that we've established. We just got the contract, I think, finished today, and so it's ready to go. We're actually hauling there now as a city.
Okay. I mean,
John,
go ahead.
Councilman Hensley?
Jumping on just that last comment that you made, if there's debris either that landed in or has been placed in the right-of-way along the curbside, and maybe it's just in the tornado zone, but is the city going around and picking that up?
Yeah, that's my next phase here to talk about.
Well, sorry to steal your thunder,
No,
but
that's
once you get out to the Algoa site, it's accessible, it's easy to drop stuff off. The folks who are there are helpful.
So you've already been.
Yeah, and
Okay.
that's great. But is there any opportunity to talk to our landfill partners on the non-vegetative debris and see if we can do some sort of large trash pickup again? I know we just had one a
Yeah,
few weeks
and-
ago. Do it again, because a lot of these folks that had trees fall down in their yards, they might be far back in the yard, and getting it up to the curb is enough work. But then these are
No,
also.
that's exactly what I'm going to talk about right here.
And these are a lot of
Yeah.
the same folks who lost roofs and had stuff thrown out into their yards from inside their house. So, loading that stuff onto a trailer and getting it to a landfill might be, it is obviously going to be considerably more work for them.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry.
No,
Go ahead with
so
your comments.
that's exactly right. So in the tornado zone, we're calling it, which is roughly, this downtown swath we've been talking about that everybody's focused on, the disposal option for that area, obviously, we would prefer, and our crews have been out, actually got help from the city of Columbia with dump trucks. So our crews have all been out picking up vegetative material, hauling it away. That's made it to the curb line. We're eligible to do that, basically from the right of way. And our trucks can work in the city streets in that area and pretty easily, and get that out of there. So what we are asking, and that's what the press release covers, is if you're in this tornado zone area, what you should do is bring your vegetative material and segregate it if you can. That'd be more practical for us and a better disposal option, more environmentally friendly, all those things. But get that vegetative material by the curb, and in the coming weeks, and we're already working on it, it'll take some time as they bring it out and we keep going through the city, we'll take that out to the disposal site out at Algoa. So there's a process for that, and we'll do that. Now, as far as the building debris and materials, we also, to the maximum extent you can, just include our building materials and debris and get that in another pile in front of your house at the curb line. We understand it's going to have vegetative debris in it. The governor, DNR, everybody understands that, and that's eligible to go to the landfill. So that's kind of phase 2 or 3 maybe. That will be picked up with a separate vehicle in the coming weeks again, but so everybody's going to have to be patient, and that would be picked up and hauled to the landfill. And so we understand now if you're much outside of this zone, I'm going to call it just, I think, from east-west, maybe Madison to Clark, we're talking about somewhere inside that area. Building materials and vegetative debris, trying to contain this to that zone that we call them the tornado zones, roughly.
We're going south of Stadium, though, too, right?
Yeah, and
Okay.
now, river to Ellis in that area, too.
Okay.
I'm just saying, I'm trying to give you the east-west and maybe the north-south river back to Ellis in that area. So you've just kind of like the map up here where they've shaded it in, kind of that area I'm referring to as tornado zone. But if you're living out on, by the mall, it's probably we're not focused on that area, obviously. We're focused on the tornado zone for this. But, so if you get those building materials, and I'm not talking about tearing your entire house down and bringing it out to the curb, that's probably phase 4. But certainly if there's debris in your yard that you can readily get it out to the curb and get it there, again, kind of following some of the parameters, reasonable size, try to keep it close to the curb as possible so people can still drive through the area. That's our goal. So And I might also, as I think it's mentioned, we have lots of people out there just watching this go on. We have large equipments and very large trucks out there doing this work, so that is a dangerous place to be. These backhoes swing back and forth, and walking past that is very dangerous. We're doing the best we can, but if you could limit, and the public could limit being there, that's really ideal for these trucks. And then also the trucks getting away from that site, getting out to the site and back. That's why we've asked other communities to help us, and they're more than willing to do so, supply the trucks and drivers, but it take less time for that truck to make that round trip, and we'll get through this much quicker. So that's another thing about limiting folks coming into the area. But that's what the press release is just going out. I think he just sent it out. Is talking about, we're trying to make it as clear as possible, but it's, short time frame. We'll better define that in the coming weeks, and we'll have some brochures we're working on. We borrowed a few from Joplin, so we got to tweak them a little bit, but it will be coming out in the coming weeks. And this is a long-term process. I think everybody understands that. So it's going to take a while to get through there. We get a lot of volunteers saying, hey, I got a backhoe, I can help, but trying to organize that is just not efficient with the trucks, letting them in and out of the zones. But I think we can do a fairly quick job of this. The city's done this in the past with a big ice storm since I worked here, and we did something similar just for vegetation, of course, but we cleaned it up pretty quickly, and then, we had a burn site and all that. Well, this is going out to Algoa. It's away from residences. It's near the landfill. It's mainly, I believe, at this point, going to be ground up. That's why it can only be vegetation. And so, no, we're not anticipating a burn site at this time, although that's available to the operator. But that's kind of the status of that. Now, as far as what we did today or in this weekend, I'm going to turn it over to Britt and talk a little bit about what our crews have been doing, kind of the flood status, that kind of thing. Any questions before I leave that disposal option? All right, thank you.
Yes, first off, I just received a call from Chip Webb with Ameren UE wanting to give an update on the power restoration. Currently, they are about 90% power restoration to the area. That obviously is an estimate. They're planning on working through the night and with a goal. They don't know that they're going to meet this goal, but their goal is to get 100%, obviously, as quickly as possible. So they will have crews working into the night and continue to restore power. I mentioned them because it kind of plays into what our cleanup operations have been in Public Works. We've broken our work into basically phases or priorities, if you will. Our first priority is open the road. And we've used everything from snow plows to loaders to simply push the debris back off the road so they can make it passable in the event that emergency vehicles need to make access into that area. But for us to be able to do that, many of this, the debris, be it building debris or vegetated debris, is tangled with power lines which may or may not be live. So we've been working closely with Ameren crews as they get those lines either killed or back up in the air. Excuse me, phone's trying to ring. As they get those lines back up in the air, our crews come through, as I said, first priority, push the road open and push it back. Then, as crews have been available, beyond that, we've got the second part of our priority, which is to begin to clean the vegetation from the right-of-way. Not the building debris, the vegetation. So we have been hauling. Today, we had as many as 12 dump trucks making rounds to that drop-off site off of Algoa Road. I have to send a very large thank you to the City of Columbia for providing us 6 trucks and drivers, and these drivers came in on their day off. They were normally work 410s. This is normally their day off. They put out a call, and within half an hour to an hour, they had 6 trucks rolling our way from people that were off that day. So a big thank you to that group.
I would say other communities offered that. Fulton, Sedalia, I had somebody from St. Louis, but these folks were local, get here quick, so we're appreciative of everybody, and we could handle logistically, we felt we could, use those 6 trucks with the equipment to load them and keep everybody moving. So we thank all the communities, but Columbia was available quickly, and so we got with them quick.
And thanks to technology, the chief reminded me that wasn't very clear on power restoration. When Ameren says 90% power restored, that may or may not include the actual structure itself. We're talking about getting power lit up to the poles or through the street neighborhood. There may be issues with the connection to the actual physical house, which may prevent that particular residence from having power, but they have the ability to get power as we do that. And yeah, and I want to let Larry talk a little bit more about that part in his discussion. However, moving forward with our cleanup, as I said today, we had 5 crews working with over 12 dump trucks, and as the process goes on, and as Matt has mentioned, the cleaning up the building debris may take a little bit later as we develop that process. We're still working toward that process. Don't want to leave out the fact that layered onto this particular horrible event is a flood taking place in North Jefferson City, as you all know. This morning at approximately, yesterday morning, yesterday afternoon, water began coming over the levees in small amounts. Primarily in places where we had good vegetation on the top of that levee. The small trickle, inch or two of water we anticipated would happen, and we basically were monitoring it. Then as the hours progressed this morning, about mid-morning, we noticed that there was a place, due to the inspection of the levee district personnel, a location where the water was beginning to cut through the levee as it was running over it. Cutting through the levee, eroding the levee was very troublesome. We pulled some of our dump trucks off of vegetation duty and dispatched them over there to begin hauling first asphalt millings and then shot rock from the Edgewood area where it's being shot. We did that for about an hour till it became clear that we were not going to be able to contain that potential breach. And at about 11:30, that levee did breach. The water has been flowing in from that breach since that time at a fairly steady and heavy and ever increasing rate. The results of that is, if you can think of this as a bathtub, where it's a reverse bathtub, where the bathtub is floating out in the ocean, but there's no water in the bathtub. Eventually, water begins to fill the bathtub, and depending on how much water comes over the top is how fast it fills. So as a result, that bathtub, if you will, area behind the levee is filling. Currently, we've just received a message from our airport manager who's monitoring over there. Water has reached the taxiway, one of our taxiways, but currently none of our buildings are impacted by that rising water. But we expect that to happen in the near future, unless the water from the river were to decrease dramatically, which we do not expect. Right now, the river level is at 31.7. Actually, I believe it's 31.71, with a predicted crest of 31.7. So in other words, we are at crest. Problem is, we were also at the predicted crest at 8 o'clock this morning, and it continued to rise. These are models. It is not an exact science. We don't know if we are at crest or not until we see the decline. Currently, we're not seeing a decline. So we are now preparing ourselves and assuming that we are going to completely fill that area behind the levee. And as I understand it, all folks behind the levee have been evacuated. We don't have any concerns over loss of life, but property damage is imminent. And on that happy note, I will be happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Smith? Okay. Mr. Moran?
Yeah, one other thing, and we've been working on is just what's to come. Obviously, we're going to continue this debris removal, and that'll continue this weekend as well. With our crews, of course, we have to get them some rest, and so we're shifting them out and doing things. but we know people are going to continue to clean up. But we're also working with our Parks Department and the police to kind of site some areas where we can get out some, basically some stations, if you will. I'll call them that, where we have maybe some tents set up. We'll get some water in there, things like that, where the volunteers or folks that are helping clean up can go to, kind of scatter these around. It might be a little time trying to site those and get those out there. Still got to worry about the power lines, but we're going to site a couple of those and try to see how that goes, maybe get some porta potties in those areas. So you're going to see some improvements of the folks that are working there. They'll have some things that accessible to them. We're not anticipating manning these stations, other than, dropping those supplies there and moving on. So that's yet to come.
All right, any further questions? All right, well, thanks to the Public Works Department for being out there and all the work. And at this time, we'll ask Mr. Larry Burkhardt to give us an update from the Planning and Protective Services. That's all right.
Let's see.
Oh,
It's
and-
been a very exciting couple of days, especially with yesterday with fire and the police helping us with the initial assessment with Missouri Task Force 1, which you already had that explained to you. Yesterday afternoon, we had an opportunity then and Chief Schofield helped us out tremendously by contacting the SAVE organization, which is sponsored by the Department of Public Safety underneath SEMA. And so what they have done is to train volunteers across the state for actually earthquake and also this type of disaster with tornado. We keep thinking about Cape Girardeau and other places that are earthquake prone. So anyways, these are architects and engineers that have been trained to look at particular structural failures in a quick visual mode. So SAVE stands for Structural Assessment Visual Evaluation. So this morning we had 16 volunteers besides management staff from SAVE come, and we're located in a large conference room, and they sent out 8 teams this morning with local, if you want to say, guides, which consisted mainly of our building inspectors, and we actually had one from Columbia come down. They volunteered their staff. So as of a little bit more than a half hour ago, they had 375 inspections done, and what they've been doing is tagging each of the buildings with either a green placard, which means they're good, yellow means they do need some work, and red is unsafe. So, and that was distributed. Lieutenant Williams sent out a press conference, and so, or a notice to the press about what we're trying to do. And so, hopefully by tomorrow morning, we should have things pretty well under control. Fortunately, we have Task Force 1's data, and the SAVE folks never used that before. This is the first opportunity they've had, so we're able to narrow our focus to the worst cases or the marginal cases. So that cuts it down from over 1,400 structures to about maybe 250 that we really have to assess. So this is a learning curve for them too, but it should cut our time down tremendously so we have a better idea. And I kind of liken this to a triage, a medical triage. We're looking at trying to get our hands around the damage in the area. And then yesterday was more of an initial assessment, which looked at hopefully life safety. That was the main thing, search and rescue. But today is a little bit more refined, so we can look at it and have a better information to make judgments on. People are out there trying to fix things, and that's great. But the Department of Insurance noted that you really should do temporary measures, get your insurance agent out there to look at it, because some of the repairs that they might have been doing, their insurance may not cover. So we're more interested in keeping people safe and doing temporary measures, and we are asking for permits for people so that we can at least kind of log and look at things, because I've also noticed there's a lot of business licenses coming for a lot of tree services and roof services, and those are probably legitimate people, but unfortunately, with this type of incident, we do get people that take advantage of other people. We can fix your roof. They walk down the street, we can fix your roof, and some people say, yeah, fine. But that's why I want to at least get a permit out so we can see who did what and try to help the public do things right. So that's a quick summary. If you have any questions, I mean, power is going to have to be restored after we say it's safe, because some of the weatherheads and services have been ripped off the buildings. As I said, they'll get power to the main lines, but those individual residences, we are also going to try to concentrate on and get people back in and help those people that were displaced. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Burkhart. Any questions? And we appreciate those certified engineers because they are volunteering. This is a volunteer effort, correct?
Yes.
They are. Thank you. All right.
Claire,
Kroll?
for the permits, we'll obviously turn those around very quickly.
They will be expedited as fast as we can, especially I've been in touch already with the architect for Special Olympics and also Riley and some other major places.
And it's certainly appropriate for somebody to ask a contractor whether in fact they do have a city business license, and then we can certainly confirm whether they have one or not if they call us.
Yes.
Any other questions? Mr. Molman?
Yeah, and just to add on to Steve, an appropriate question that people should be asking anyone doing work for them is that they're appropriately insured as well, and to ask for, documentation of that insurance. It's important that, that when you're hiring people to help you, get out of a situation, that if things go sideways, that the people doing that work are insured and don't make a bad situation worse.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Burkhart. Thank you. We also have with us, we have Commissioner Bushman, but we have our sheriff and also Cole County EMS. So if there's, Mr. Bill Farr, is there a county update at this time? Anything that y'all need to add or would like to add? Bill Farr or Sheriff Wheeler?
I would refer to Bill Farr. He's actually the interim commander for this, and also been doing an outstanding job, by the way.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Farr. Is there anything you need to add this evening or today?
So, basically in the county.
And if you come to the microphone.
That's the reason why Sheriff put it on you.
Paybacks.
Yes.
Oh, it's your birthday? It's Bill's.
Thank you. This is going to be a memorable one.
This will be a birthday you won't forget. Happy
Yes.
birthday.
Thank you. So as far as the Emergency Operations Center, I think it's a great thing to mention the cooperation between city and county is one for our whole community. The county is doing basically the same thing with the city, is interacting. Our law enforcement, your law enforcement. The sheriff's brought in people that they need to for any of their matters. As you know, we've had a lot of problems out in the county as far as the destruction, maybe not as big as business-wise as far as the city, but we've had a lot of homes totally destroyed, several areas, trailer parks, things like that. So as Larry mentioned with the Safe Coalition, they'll be starting here tomorrow and probably continue that next week to do this assessment for the county as well. Because the big thing to do as far as the EOC operation, Emergency Operations Center, when we get done with all this paperwork has to be sent into the federal government. We had FEMA actually came today with the State Emergency Management Director, Ron Walker. So they're doing a lot of stuff up northwest now in that presidential declaration. The paperwork that we will be doing now to get this presidential declaration for Cole County, Jeff City is a lot of intense paperwork. Every document has to be kept up for all the people that's coming in to help as volunteers, as well as our city county folks that's working every day. These are some major issues that we've seen in the past, and we will continue. So as far as the operations, we kind of shut down now for the evening. We'll pick up again early in the morning. I'm going to have a skeleton crew at 8 o'clock. We'll open the EOC up again for any calls that might come. As we mentioned with Deb Hendricks, they'll be there to help with a lot of this volunteer management stuff. So every step we're taking, if we see an issue, we're trying to take care of that. And again, that is folks from city and county sitting in there, making those decisions between ourselves, what's best for the community as a whole. The paperwork thing, we'll start taking care of that. They're already doing and keeping that up. A lot of this comes back from federal government. If we get a disaster, as we know, a couple of years ago, we took out one of the roads, I think Lincoln. That's a 75%. All this volunteer hours that we can collect is part of our 25% match. So that saves us a lot of money both. So it's pretty detailed, but we've been through it before. We'll do it again. Of course, it's a little bit larger scale. And so we've got a lot of great support. We're here in the Capitol. Lieutenant Governor Kehoe's been here with us asking questions. What can we do to help? State government's come really out. Anytime we've asked a question, they give us people right here in the Emergency Operations Center, answer those questions, and lead us to all this. So I think we're very important for that and much gracious. So I'll answer any other questions
Any questions?
at all.
All right, thank you, Mr. Farr.
Thank you all.
Yes.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Joe.
At this time, we'll take council questions, and I'll start with a few. How do we plan to handle Saturday and Sunday? So today's a weekend, so with, City Hall, or what will be open for, or will there be any need to be here, or what's the plan for the weekend?
I'm not sure what the plan for phone calls or what.
Just
To-
anything, or will we?
Well, we'll have the Emergency Operations Center. Police will still be doing their thing. Emergency Operations Center will still be doing the things that they do, although it may be scaled back a little bit. Is that right? You guys want to answer that weekend thing? I think if there's some phone calls, they would still end up going to police either for emergency situations or the information, the non-emergency number. But as far as being able to answer questions about, I can't think of a question offhand, maybe related to volunteers or something like that, then that would probably be something that we would answer on Tuesday.
So questions will
Britt had
have, but this
something.
time we have
Britt-
the weekday numbers, so just Public Works and those kind of things, just how to connect people. So, Mr. Smith?
I apologize, I neglected this in my report. Matt had asked me to mention it. We will have crews working Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, continuing the cleanup operations out there in the street. As for phone calls, our main Public Works number has a rollover, or I shouldn't say a rollover, a message on it asking folks to call the non-emergency number if they have, need of services or need to let us know something, and that goes straight into the communications, and then dispatch can notify our crews during that time. But we will have crews working Saturday, Sunday, and Monday through the weekend and continuing that cleanup operation.
And give us the number again, Mr. Smith?
Well, it's best the non-emergency number for communications, I'll let Dave say.
It's 634-6400.
Thank you. And I have a question about the volunteers. When I know that, and this might be for Debbie, that you gave us the 211 if people want to volunteer or need assistance. So we also have the mall, and I'd like to touch on what the control center, for volunteer control center is at the mall, and what the hours of operation there, and how people can connect, and what that is. When I was there earlier today, they were mainly just kind of collecting names and phone numbers of people. But what will that look like throughout the weekend?
So the Volunteer Reception Center is a place where people can physically go and offer their volunteer services. And the reason that they were just taking names at this point was because of the area not really being accessible yet. And so those have gone actually to United Way 211 in St. Louis, and they've been put in a list. And once the area is open and work orders from people who need assistance start coming, they will match the volunteers, groups or individuals. We encourage individuals to affiliate with a volunteer group so they're covered by liability insurance. So if you're an individual and you go to the Volunteer Reception Center, you'll be encouraged to hook up with, say, the Missouri Baptist Disaster Relief to do chainsaw work, or to go serve food with the Salvation Army, so that you are affiliated with a group. That matching will occur via 211. And those names are in that hopper these are volunteers, and they have listed their skill sets, so they can be matched with the work that needs to be done. And an update, I got word earlier that the electronic voice prompts at 211 should be removed by tomorrow morning. So by tomorrow morning, anyone who calls 211 with a need or a wish to volunteer or donate will be talking to a human person immediately.
And how are you handling donations for items, or what are the needs, and how do you communicate that? There are a lot of calls coming in of people wanting to donate items, and we need a clear answer, so could you give us that?
So I am reaching out after this meeting and talking with Ann Bax. I understand that she has been in contact with the Volunteer Reception Center leader at the mall, and they are working together to secure a location to take actual physical donations. We would still encourage those who call with offers to go to 211 to make that offer. Again, there's a matching process and a timing process that can occur by 211, so that we can say, oh, well, we're not ready for flooring yet because the homes are not being rebuilt, but we know that there is flooring available from a particular donor at the time that we need it. So again, 211 is our go-to for callers, but those who want to bring donations, Ms. Bax and my group is working together on a location for that. As to your other question, which was about, I can't remember, I'm sorry, Madam Mayor.
You want to bring items to donate, and what items are they accepting?
Yes, we're going to try to do targeted messaging through Lieutenant Williams and all of the social media about particularly what items are needed. And Mr. Farr has indicated that he does not wish for used clothing to be donated, and so we will gently convey that wish as well. But we will use all of the media available to us to say, these are the items that are needed, and this is where they can be dropped off for distribution.
Thank you.
And I would
Councilman
add,
Hussey?
Mayor, to answer your question, I know the Red Cross put up a post last night on Facebook with a very specific list of toiletry items they were looking for, and they were accepting those at their main office location on Emerald Drive, which is just off of Edgewood Drive in that plaza there. So I know if people are looking for a specific thing to give, they were looking for travel size items to put together, care packages basically to give to those that are housed in the shelter. I guess my follow-up going into the weekend, will there be volunteer opportunities this week? When we talk about matching these sorts of things, I just think through that for the next 3 days, being a community that is dominated by a state workforce, we have a large state workforce that's going to be off for 3 days. And they're going to be looking, and next Tuesday, they're going to be expected to be back at work. And so I think we have a lot of people willing to give time. I just wonder, do you know the plan? If somebody goes and fills this out on 211 and doesn't hear anything until Sunday or Monday, their window of volunteering is maybe closing at that point in time.
Well, I believe the esteemed city administrator has a list of opportunities for people, and Public Works is asking for Sawyer teams because some of the areas will be open for that sort of work. So if anyone knows of volunteer opportunities, if you know that there are either skilled or unskilled opportunities for volunteers, I would love to know about that, and we can make that available through United Way 211 so that they know that we can only publish what we know.
Okay.
Can I just follow up that we, the city right now, are not prepared preparing any specific volunteer activities or events for the next 3 days. Frankly, we're just busy with so many other things right now. There may be some specific organizations like United Way that are, but we want to get coordinated with the 211 system, make sure that we've got the list of things that need to be done through that organization and be able to make that a single point of contact. So I don't mean right now, I mean, we could try to throw something together, but, it takes people, it takes resources, we don't want to get in the way of anything, so I think it may be a little bit early for us to do that. Although there are some events like school is doing some things out here.
It could be that Ms. Bax knows that that the stadium, at JC needs to be walked or for picking up debris or something like that. So any of those types of events that we hear about, we certainly will coordinate with 211.
And then I guess my final question, and I've been asked this a couple times, you talk about some of the locations here, and there's a large group of people displaced. And so I know the Red Cross is sheltering, but I'm starting to get some questions about what's short-term, long-term plans for these families that aren't permitted back in their structures, and I don't know where to direct. Again, it's a volunteer thing, but people are just, do we have a plan of action? Who's taking the lead on that particular piece?
So again, a standard process in disaster is that those survivors first register for casework, and they get immediate assistance. So that would be those hygiene kits and things that can get them through immediately. But when they go through the intake process, they will be asked questions about what their long-term needs are. And eventually, and not too far down the road, believe me, those cases will be transferred for long-term case management. And that will include hooking those folks together with a case manager who will walk their walk with them and try to meet their unmet needs all the way to whatever their new normal will become. So that will happen. We're talking about some of the ways that we can do that. It's a little early for those, but I would expect to see some of those processes beginning in the next week or so.
So just to follow up, if somebody, elected official, gets that kind of a question, their answer should be, what should they do? To whom should they refer those individuals?
211.
Lieutenant Williams?
Madam Mayor, several people have talked about it through the course of our meeting, but I want to make sure one of the ending messages that we talk about is we want our citizens to get back to where they were, but we also have to take into consideration that there are a lot of people out there that will take advantage of them. So we want to make sure that when there is a situation where someone's offering help and they want to be paid for that, that the citizens don't feel like they have to, because there are resources out there. There's going to be a lot of people coming into our community not with the same values of our community, and they're going to try to take advantage of them. So we want to make sure that we keep that out there, that there are those people out there, and we have to make sure that we keep track so that we can have value and not get taken advantage of.
So Lieutenant Williams, how do we sort of monitor that, or how would the public know that, the distinguish between, we mentioned earlier, ask for insurance documentation. What's your advice?
Probably the first thing you would want to do is to ask the question of, who are you and why are you here? If it's your neighbor that you recognize and you know they're there to help, and it's simply something, gas for their chainsaw, that's one thing. But if they come in and they're talking about remodeling your house, and your house is one of those that the group has determined that's probably going to not be repaired, that's probably an indication you should be paying more attention to their intent. The business license is definitely one of those things. Ask them. We will be more than happy to help a citizen that doesn't know if a person is legit. The city administrator mentioned that all they have to do is call, and we can help. If it's this weekend and you feel like someone's not really there for you, they'll come back Tuesday when we can verify whether or not they're a legitimate person.
Councilman Hensley and Fitzwater.
Right, thank you. And I'll add on to that the Missouri Attorney General's office has great resources for consumers facing this type of situation through the consumer protection section there. Resources available on ago.mo.gov through the website. And then once The work week begins next week, of course, and by telephone. And disaster recovery, unfortunately, is like we've been saying, it's brought out really the best of the members of our community. Unfortunately, it also brings out people who would seek to take advantage of people in need. And the Attorney General's office has some great resources on that. Thank you.
Councilman Fitzwater?
I was just going to tag on to Councilman Hussey's question. I also talked to a number, and as I'm sure all of us had, of displaced business owners. They have no offices now. And I'd heard last night that there were maybe folks that had vacant buildings that were, possibly would make that available to folks. Are we also coordinating like displaced people, also displaced businesses, like Communicate has no place to go to, Association of Counties, Frank Burkhead, I'm sure he has other opportunities, but there are folks, at least up Capitol, that they don't have an office to go to on Tuesday.
Debbie, is that something your office coordinates?
Not routinely, but I certainly would be happy to work with the chamber or the business associations here in town and see what we can do. Again, it's a matching process, and so I don't think it's that much different from what we tend to do with individuals and families, so I'm happy to pitch in on that.
I'll take an office, Ron. I don't have an office right now. Can't get in the building.
We have one in our building, and you're more than welcome to it.
Thank you. I might take you up on that next week.
And I don't think we really answered the question about, Councilman Hussey had a good point about the weekend, because with the city, already closed, the city won't be providing, perhaps, although Public Works will be out, and, the groups will be out, but trying to make sure that there are volunteer opportunities starting for tomorrow morning for volunteers. So I want to make sure that that is ready for tomorrow morning.
Someone from the city of Jefferson is going to have to let us know what those volunteer opportunities might be.
Just to clarify, do we know who that someone, would that be Lieutenant Williams? Okay. Who would that be?
Well, we're still working on that specific piece, but I'll be real candid here. I don't think we're ready to do a volunteer event tomorrow of cleanup. We certainly, if you want us to, we can, but we've got a short period of time here to pull that all together and get the announcements out and make sure we have it coordinated and the materials and everything else.
Well, what I'm talking about is not getting announcements for like a volunteer effort, but this would be coordinating. We already have the volunteers at 211 that have gone to the mall volunteer reception center. So as things come in that need to be done, and they may come in from the city or maybe the public that says, hey, we need, this area has debris and it needs to be cleaned up. So people would also reach out to you, or it doesn't have to be only the city, but you're used to this. This is your thing where you do the volunteer reception. So how does this typically work?
So either at the volunteer reception center or by calling 211, people can make us aware that there are needs for volunteers, and that 211 will be staffed around the clock, and so we will be able to do that matching over the weekend, but also at the Emergency Operations Center, I will be working this weekend, and so I can help with that too. It's just a matter of knowing what volunteer opportunities are out there, so.
Well, I know a big concern, and Ann Bax from United Way had also stated that the big concern is the utility workers and the big debris that's still needing to be moved, but we can't get in there when there's power lines down, and some of those things have to happen first. So having that understanding, and that's where the city's coordinated efforts come in, but trying to balance that and knowing that we're coming on a weekend and just making sure that all those parts, and I know they are moving together and working together between Ameren, communicating within neighborhoods that they've already completed or are working on, and then what those volunteer efforts and needs are, whether it's rebuilding something or whatever, just making sure that we're all connected. And so
And that's what the 211, I'll call it that system, but that whole volunteer system will be able to take the people that have particular skills. Somebody may say, hey, I just want to volunteer time. Somebody may have more skills, chainsaw or something like that, and you will be able to match that particular skill with also organizations that provide the service, United Way, for example, or if there's an entity that needs that work, I'm not so sure the city would be one. We'll take care of our own need for people helping remove trees and things like that. But so you'll be matching up the people with the need and the people with the skills or the opportunities and what they want to do. It's just that for something for tomorrow, we don't have that in place right now.
No, but perhaps if Lieutenant Williams is putting out another news release or doing some social media work, we can say, if you have need of volunteers, please make that need known by calling or 211, or, letting that be known through media. Does that work, Dave?
Yes, whatever, even after hours, if someone can give me that information, either you, Deb, or one of the council members, if you hear something. It's my city email, so if you find out something, I'll be more than happy to publish that in case there's someone that wants to do something over the weekend.
And I don't know if there are any organizations which are having events, United Way, for example. But if they are, we would want to know that and let it be coordinated also through 211.
And to your point, it's a little early for a workday. I mean, in the scope of a general disaster, I would say next weekend might be, weather permitting, about the time that we would let it be known that it would be a big workday weekend for, doing debris stacking and things like that. So, but we'll do what we can. If business owners, need help, all of those opportunities can go in social media, and the State Emergency Management Agency and Department of Public Safety will be using our PIO to back up those messages through our channels as well. So we're trying to get the word out as best as possible.
Okay, so it sounds like we want to get a message out to the public that as they have needs, this is not all coming from the city saying here's what needs to be, here's where we need volunteer work. Citizens that are out that have specific needs can reach out to 211 and say, I have a need, I need help, here's what I need.
Yes, Madam Mayor,
Volunteers.
that's correct.
And you two, Lieutenant Williams and Susan, will get together and craft a message to get out with a press release and on social media. And I know we have social media with the City of Jefferson Facebook and the Police Department, and you have something as well that you will get it out on, or you can share that with us. I also wanted to ask, on the city's website, is this information we talked about today available on the homepage?
Madam Mayor, my understanding is everything that we've been putting out, we've been sharing through the city's Facebook page, the police department, the fire department, all of those pages. As far as the map, I know that it was updated as well in the front page of the city website, where the Public Works had put the map for the flooding and everything else. We've also included the curfew map, the updated map, so we're trying to put all the information out there as best we can.
Okay, could we also put the 211 and a couple of those information, maybe there's the volunteer reception center at the mall or something on the city's website as well? Can that be put on there? And I don't know who.
I'll be happy to work
We have
to do that.
a tab on the city's website right now for flooding, for example. The tab, or the front page has flooding. So is there a place that we could put this 211? And we're talking about in here because we all know it.
I will talk to the IT personnel to make sure that we can access that, to add that to the buttons where people will be able to see that. And if necessary, we can put out a new press release, since there has been some confusion with the 211 system and how it's working, and add to the fact that
I want to make sure it's all working before we get all the pieces there. But
Maybe tomorrow would be best.
Thank you. Just two little things. Just to add on to my last comments, and to the extent anyone might hear this, the Consumer Protection Hotline phone number at the Attorney General's office, where you can register complaints and then speak to someone with any questions or concern you might have, is 800-392-8222, and you can also get the same information and go through the complaint process online through the ago.mo.gov website. And again, the phone number is 800-392-8222 and ago.mo.gov. And the other thing I'll just mention, and maybe this is frowned upon, I certainly appreciate all the organized effort that's going into putting interested volunteers in exactly the right places, and certainly that will take time. I hope that there's nothing wrong though with if someone's driving around and happens to see a neighbor trying to pull debris up to their curb, and they have time and they have interest. I hope there's nothing wrong with just hopping out and offering to help, as long as you're not getting in the way of any heavy machinery or putting yourself or anyone else in danger. That might be a decent way to spend your time until a larger organized effort can be put in place. So thanks very much to everyone who's working so hard on this, and also to folks who are out there helping each other.
Thank you. Mr. Burkhart?
I just checked, and SAVE is pretty much at 99% complete, so we're 100% certain we'll be finished tomorrow morning. I just need to verify some inspections with them, but the teams are pretty tired, so we'll be here at 8 o'clock in the morning to finish it off. So then we can start going back down to normal procedures, at least as far as building regs go.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Molman?
Thank you. I wanted to piggyback on Councilman Hensley's comments. We earlier put information for free legal assistance. Both the Missouri Bar and the Missouri Association of Trial Lawyer have free legal assistance programs, and the conversation reminded me of that. One of the things that was specifically mentioned in their information was they can do contract and document review for people who are looking to hire people to do work for them. So, one of those other things that you can do is call on these resources that are available for legal. If you have questions about, does this look right? What am I signing myself up for? The Missouri Bar and Missouri Association of Trial Attorneys have free legal assistance, which can include things like that. They are kind of staffed up and ready to address whatever legal assistance is related to disaster, and the breadth of services that they are prepared to provide appear to be pretty lengthy. That information was posted out on the city's Facebook page and also on the front page of the website. So I would just say, be vigilant. Don't be shy in making sure that your rights and your interests are being protected. It's a bad situation. There's people out that want to help you and make sure that you're not making any that people are taking an advantage of you, and that's another way to help yourself out.
Lieutenant Williams?
I was reading the email as well.
There's been an update from Ameren saying that by 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, they will be able to start sending out volunteers. They figured that the area will be fully functioning as far as power goes. They've just made that announcement, and I think that's what the mayor was prodding me for.
We received that from United Ways, so there might be some updates. It sounds like updates will be coming as of this evening, but again, there's a lot of logistics that need to take place to make sure that all comes together, so be watchful.
And phone. So they're out working kind of behind Ameren, and in some cases we had to give them a little time before we could clear debris. So, once they get done, there's also these two other utility companies behind them. Now, it's not going to kill you like electricity will. However, we're sensitive to those provide services to people's houses that are still functional, and so we got to give them a little time, but we're putting some pressure on them to make that a very short time. or we're going to have to open up some of the roads regardless, so that could put some of those services out of service for you. But again, trying to get some of our major corridors open, Ellis Boulevard, right now, I believe, they're out there working, and so we're hopeful tomorrow, they're going to get done. And so we're really pushing them to get done. But you might see that, well, I know my power's back on. We've said, well, why are they not open then, just because of these two wires on the ground? And so, we're working through that issue. And so again, I think if people are out volunteering during the thing, like Mr. Councilman Hensley indicated, and putting that debris at the curb line, it may not get picked up tomorrow, but, we're working on it, but it'll be a long process, but get it to that curb line and it will get picked up in those tornado zones.
Okay, and I'm going to have to step out for just a moment, so I might ask Councilman Hussey to continue until we adjourn unless I come back in, but I wanted to make sure there weren't any other questions of anyone else, so.
Madam Mayor,
Councilman Graham?
I know that we've talked about the two biggest things in the room, and there's another elephant in the room I think that we need to talk about as a council. I know we talked about the tornado and the flooding, but I know at some point, and I don't know if we need to do this today since we do have a quorum, but we do need to talk about the funding. And as relates to, I know that we don't want to go below the 17% fund balance, but I think during times like these, we're going to have to dip into that fund balance, and I don't want that to be an issue. So I'm asking, do we need to take action on that today to authorize the city administrator to go into that, so it's not a conversation we have to have later on? He's coming back to us, or is it some other type of funding we're going to need to do later on? But I think that it's something that we're still going to need to talk about. To me, it's like, that funeral that you go to, you still have to talk about how you're gonna pay for it. So I do want to have that conversation. I don't know if you'd have it today, but at some point we're gonna have to have it. So I know that Bill Farr has talked about the president's declaration and keeping up with everything that we do, and everything as far as volunteer hours and everything that's spent. But as relates to going into the fund balance, I think we need to take action on that and give that authority to our city administrator if that's what's needed.
I'll let Steve speak to that.
And certainly a good conversation. I don't know that today's the time, like as you noted, but I think we could certainly, we are prepared to have some more of that conversation. I would say that a lot of the activities that are going on now, even though they get to maybe eligible for reimbursement, there are things that we have in the system already. There are things, expenditures already accounted for as far as like salaries. We know we already anticipated and we're paying the salaries, but now we're going to work to get those reimbursed because they're getting directed from other things onto this, trucks and things like that. But it's a conversation we can certainly have soon.
I didn't want to know like the full details. Wanted to give you the authority
Yeah.
to go into that if you need to, so you don't have to
Appreciate that, yeah.
come back to us.
Yeah.
Is all I'm saying. I know we signed a contract with Twee House, and those things. I know it's not in our budget, so that we need to do something. I don't want this to be a hindrance for the needs that we have for our citizens of Jefferson. So that's the reason I was asking now, since we have a quorum, if we needed just to give you the authority to go into that. Not the details, but the authority to go into that was all I was asking, so.
Yeah, I would just say that certainly can do that if you want. I told staff not to really worry about anything right now, and we get into that. We'll be coming back to council. Always anticipated that. I just don't have a good sense of what that number is and what the impact will be on that fund balance. So it's certainly something that's coming.
I just want to make it clear, I'm not saying, that we don't. I'm saying I just want to give you the authority now, whatever those numbers may be. I really don't care what those numbers may be. I just want to give you the authority to go ahead and be able to do what you need to do so that it is not an issue that you're having to wait another 8 days for our official council meeting to say that this is this. So that's the only thing I was saying.
Is it an accurate read, Mr. Kroll, to say that, we are in month May of a budget, so we're 6 months in, so from a technical standpoint, the authorization to go and spend dollars doesn't necessarily take us into the fund balance. You may be coming back to request authorization to do that to finish the year with other expenses. Does that make sense?
It does. So typically there may be a particular expense and you allocate it out of either existing resources or out of fund balance or something like that. We just don't have our arms around all of that right now, right yet.
I would guess that you'll find a council supportive of
Yeah,
what's necessary to get the job.
If there are things, though, that need to be purchased, emergency purchase and those kinds of things, I mean, we're doing that, and certainly in keeping track of all the records of that, and hopefully get some reimbursement for those kinds of things as well. Yeah.
Are there any other questions from council members? Is there any other report to offer, an update from staff or invited guest? Seeing none, Councilman Fitzwater.
I said a general comment, and I know all of us have had similar experiences, walked up and down Capitol the last couple of days just talking to people. Walked up there this morning about, I guess, 6:15, and the little consignment shop there on the corner of Adams and Capitol had a table out with bottles of water on it and pizza, sign obviously from last night. What struck me was there were a dozen bottles of water or so on the table. The people in that community are concerned about their neighbors. They took what they needed, they left the rest for somebody else. This is a pretty amazing community.
Amen. Said it so well. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.